Hello, this is going to be a video about Viktor Schauberger, an Austrian forester whom you may or may not have heard about, whom I think is going to contribute a great deal to understanding the environment, not only from now but well into the next century and beyond, because he had insights into the movement of nature and energies in nature which I don't think anybody else ever managed to achieve, not that I've been aware about. Now, just before we continue, I want to say that this video will divide. I'm going to address Viktor Schauberger firstly from the historical point of view of what he actually did in his life, and then we'll go to discussion energy, which is fundamental to understanding Viktor Schauberger's series, and then we'll move on to water, to trees and light, and then a little bit of mathematics towards the end of it. I'll probably keep the mathematics pretty light. So first of all, we're going to go through an overview of Viktor's life fairly briefly. He was born of a long line of foresters his ancestors had been in the forest for about 400 years and looking after this area of forest, principally in Bohemia. And as a result, he had, so to speak, a genetic basis from which to interest himself in forestry. It was in his blood. And so it was very natural that when he finally was able to decide for himself what career or what path he wanted to follow in life, he chose forestry. He very much was against what you might call formal education, having seen how his elder two brothers had been sort of, in his view, perverted, that their minds had changed because they had been to university. He didn't want to do that, and he wanted to study nature in the forest and be with nature in the forest. The family motto of the whole Schauberger family was Fidus in Silvis Silentibus, which means have faith in the silent forest, or the silence of the forest. And as we will see a little later when it comes to energy, we'll find out what this silence in fact means. Now, Viktor had occasion, because of where he was in that part of Austria, which was in Steiermark, he had occasion to visit areas of forestry which had so far not been touched by human hand. And as a result, he was able to observe phenomena there which today probably cannot be found, at least they would only be very rare, because the environment has deteriorated to such an extent that these things can no longer be seen. And as a result of these observations, he then began to evolve theories about the interaction of energies, about the movement of water, the natural movement of water, and also fundamentally that energy was primary and the physical effect the secondary. In our present view of the world, we seem to take the physical artifact as being the primary one, and whatever energy created it is uninteresting to us. And so, in fact, what we do in terms of the environment is a sort of band-aid policy of fighting effect with effect with effect, and never going back to the fundamental cause. Now, in his early life, he rose very quickly to the rank of forest warden, and there he was taken into the employ of Count Prince Adolf zu Schaumburg-Lippe, who was a German nobleman who had acquired estates in Austria. And this man, this would have been just after the First World War, I suppose about 1922, and Count Lippe had spent a lot of money on the gaming tables in Monte Carlo, his wife particularly, and he always had to find money to recoup the losses, particularly from his wife, fortunately. And so the only way that was open to him in order to recover these was to cut down the forest. And he had large areas of forest which had so far been untouched, but the access to them was very difficult. And the technique in those days of transferring logs from the remote forest to wherever the sawmill was to cut them and throw them in whatever stream was handy and hope that some of the logs would get down there in a condition that they could still be used for saw logs. Of course, this was very wasteful. And this is something that disturbed Viktor greatly. And so he had already made some designs for a log flume made out of timber, which was very easy to construct and which would then transport logs from the forest to the valley in a perfect condition. This was done at the behest of Count Schauberger, who said, if you build this thing, and this was a contract, and Viktor put forward that he would build it. It was accepted by the Count, and the Count said, well, you pay for it, but if it works, I'll pay you for it. If it doesn't work, you can take it down at your own expense. Well, Viktor accepted this challenge, and rumor of his operations got out to Vienna and the Institute of Hydraulics, and there was a certain amount of anger on the part of the established science. But why hadn't they been asked to build this flume? Well, anyway, the upshot of it was that the flume was built, and the first day it was in operation, it exceeded its minimum delivery of 1,000 logs by 600 logs, and so Viktor Schauberger was paid. Now, the principles on which this operated was that there was firstly, at the top of the flume, there was a holding basin which was egg-shaped like this. Now, the egg-shaped part of it was important because when the water was let into it, no pressure was exerted on the outside. When this was actually opened, all the hydrologists from Vienna, of course the prince and princess himself, or the count and countess as it were, and any other dignitaries, the local councillors and so on, everybody was invited to the opening of this log flume. And when they saw the rather flimsy structure, this is only very schematic and it may not be quite exactly right because the existing one has already been destroyed. They said, well, you know, what's going to happen with this? That wall is far too flimsy, it's going to break. And Viktor said, no, it won't. And to prove it, he said, I'll go and stand out on the edge of it when we let the water in. And if I'm wrong, then the world has been rid of another fool. So he went and stood here when the water was let in, and actually the water came in at a height of about 4 meters height of water into this basin, which was 18 meters deep. And when it came in, it curled around the sides and around the bottom. And so by the time it got to here, it had a sort of wave which flowed back in the opposite direction and resisted the pressure of the oncoming water, and the water held. Now, everybody thought Viktor had been nuts to stand out there, but once it came and it stabilized, they realized that he had something, and actually when it was checked mathematically from a statical point of view, it was 12 times stronger than it need have been. Now, the flume itself, coming out of this holding basin, was a half egg shape. Now, it's difficult, I'm sorry there are no better diagrams or photographs than this, no clearer ones. But the actual structure of the flume, and we'll come on to that in more detail later, was built out of wood. It was half egg-shaped. It followed, as far as possible, the path of the river in the valley where it was being built. Because Viktor said, you always have to copy nature. You have to comprehend and copy nature. You have to see what nature is doing and copy her. And in this situation, the water likes to flow like this, so we could copy it. And the log flume followed the same curves as the valley.